Never mind. The other judge got it.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I can keep my own time if that's easier. Okay, I'll start the 7-minute timer now. Merlin knew how to make an entrance, a crashing entrance. No, literally, the guy invented roller skates by strapping wheels onto the bottom of his shoes in the late 1700s, rolling into a giant ball, crashing into a mirror, and shattering the entire thing. He certainly knew how to make an entrance, and certainly knew how to get people's attention. But the thing that I love about Joseph Merlin, other than inventing my favorite sport, is that he wasn't afraid to do what he felt like doing. The man literally was like, what if I put wheels on my shoes? Like, how sick would that be? And I think it's important that we carry this attitude throughout our lives, that if we are unwilling to pursue the things that interest us and challenge us, we're ultimately going to be let down. Now, I received the quotation today. I should have been a concert pianist. And while I'm no pianist myself, I do agree with this quotation because I think there's things in life that we want to do that we're afraid to pursue. And I argue that what we need to do is cast away those feelings of doubt and be willing to pursue the things that we want to do and that we're interested in. So regardless of whether or not it scares us, it's important that we try that dream of being a concert pianist, whatever it may be. Now today, I'm going to show this in 3 lenses. First, through Lacan's theory of the mirror stage. Before second, examining the liking gap. And then finally, taking a look at a famous concert pianist himself, Keith Jarrett. The theoretical lens, though. Lacan's theory of the mirror stage hypothesizes that what if we, full-grown human adult beings, could embody the exact same feelings that young children have the first time they see themselves in a mirror and recognize that, like, it's them. They're like, oh my God, like that's my arm at around 2 years old. What if we as human beings were able to envision the person that we wanted to be in a theoretical mirror and then be able to become that person? What Lacan's theory of the mirror stage tells us is that we should imagine ourselves becoming these concert pianists and dedicate ourselves to that dream in order to achieve it. If we half-heartedly pursue it or don't fully recognize the power that it could hold, we hold almost no chance at actually achieving those dreams. So we need to fully realize our ultimate objectives and be willing to picture ourselves in that role in order to actually be able to accomplish it, thereby showing that the idea of I should have been a concert pianist is linked to Lacan's theory of the mirror because this woulda, coulda, shoulda attitude could have been changed if we had only been willing to dedicate ourselves to that image. Okay, enough theory. Let's talk about the fun stuff. Let's get into the idea of the liking gap. The liking gap was a study conducted by Cornell University and examined how people's perceptions of how people liked them matched up to people's actual attitudes. And what they found may not come to you as shocking, but people tend to undervalue how much people like them. So what they did was, introduce 2 people who didn't know each other, have them have a short conversation, and then ask them to rate how much they thought the other person liked them. And what we find is that people consistently underscore our likability to others. What this ultimately means, in the light of the idea that we should have been a concert pianist, is that we have to recognize that we are engaging, capable, interesting human beings, and that we shouldn't go around all day thinking that the people we've met absolutely absolve and hate us. Because when we do so, we lose opportunities to make new friends, new connections, new colleagues, and meet new people, ultimately showing us that we shouldn't just stand back in the wings and wish we had done something to connect with people, but realize that people do like us and we need to be willing to step forward to meet them in the middle. Now, finally, let's talk about a pianist himself, Keith Jarrett. In the 1960s, Keith Jarrett was one of the most world's coveted impromptu jazz pianists. And when he came to play a concert in Cologne, what he found was that the girl that had called him to this concert hall actually only had half of a grand piano for him. And Keith Jarrett was like, I'm not playing on this piece of garbage. And the girl, Vera Brandes, begged him. She was like, please, like, I am a young concert pianist and I really want you to perform at my concert hall and I am begging you. And Keith Jarrett did. He didn't just think he should have been a concert pianist. He stepped up to the plate and played on a half-broken piano. And you want to know the best part? That to this day, the record that was recorded on that half-broken piano is still the #1 impromptu selling jazz piano album of all time. So by not just standing in the wings, but by literally being a concert pianist, Keith Jarrett showed us that we have to be willing to take a risk to pursue the things we love. So today I analyzed our quotation. I should have been a concert pianist. And what I interpreted this to mean is we shouldn't just let our dreams be mean. We should actively pursue them if we want to make a difference and improve our lives. And I agreed with this idea and showed it in 3 key ways. First, how we can actually realize this potential with Lacan's theory of the mirror. Second, through the liking gap. And finally, through Keith Jarrett and Vera Brandes. So stepping back to Joseph Merlin and rolling back in time, what we can see is that the outlandish moves of this one inventor literally paved the way for decades more of roller skating fanatics to come, showing that he didn't just wish he had invented a crazy cool invention, he actually did. Thank you.
Very much for your speech. Well, we can now move on to the next speaker. Is the next speaker ready for the topic to be covered?
Yes, I am.
Go.
A frog in my throat forever.
Here's the topics, the prompt.
Okay. I'm going to start my time now.
Which one do you pick?
Oh, I'm going to choose, I believe I'm going to choose loneliness. Everyone can hear me and see me? All right. So during the start of the pandemic, everyone was forced to go inside and not communicate with a lot of people. For some people, it sucked. For me, it was heaven. It was an introvert's paradise, and I never wanted it to end. No more coffee dates that I couldn't just cancel because I had already canceled it 2 times before. No more people saying, hey, let's go out for mini golf. Yeah, sure, I love mini golf. I don't love it that much. So when I look at today's quote, or not today's quote, but today's topic, which I chose, which is loneliness, I feel like we need to embrace loneliness a little bit more and understand that it's not such a bad thing. Something that my husband and I did in the middle of the pandemic was get a lot closer through the use of our characters. We're both kind of actors, so we just pop up with these random characters that sometimes interact with other characters, such as Sloan the Sloth, which is kind of our baby, but it's also a sloth. So it's really cute and sleeps hanging upside down. It's not a real sloth, but you get what I mean. It's a way that we were able to show our love and affection with each other without needing anyone else around, and we thrived for it. So today, with just a single word of loneliness, we're going to analyze this topic through 3 facets of analysis. And what it means is that it doesn't need a lot of explaining. It's just loneliness is not a bad thing. Embracing it will help us cut out unnecessary stresses in our lives and just let us lead happier, healthier lives. So we're going to look at that through a few key facets of analysis. And first, I want to make a note on my friend Kate's point before. If we had a similar thing to what Kate was talking about, that mirror theory, where we could just envision the person we wanted to be and make strides directly to become that person, that would be great. Because then we could cut out a lot of unnecessary interactions and only speak to the people that we needed to get to that place faster. So we're going to talk about first groupthink, then we're going to talk about what happens when we allow ourselves to be pressured by society, then we're going to talk about some solutions in embracing comfort in ourselves. So first, in groupthink, when we engage in groupthink, according to Psychology Today, you start to gain anxiety in social pressures. If you don't want to do what another group wants to do, they start to ostracize you. They will punish you in some way. They'll tell you, oh, come on, you're not so fun. But this cohesion, this idea of needing to have some kind of loyalty to other people that you don't necessarily want to hang out with is the kind of thing that forces people to get anxious. It forces them to become depressed, and it ultimately leads them to having a less quality of life. Perhaps sometimes all we need is a little bit of time to ourselves. That loneliness, that is not bad. When you're lonely, you don't have to engage in groupthink. You don't have to think, well, I have to be loyal to my family or I have to be loyal to my friend group because societal reasons. So we need to go against the idea of groupthink and allow ourselves to flourish in our loneliness. But now we're going to talk about what happens when we do allow ourselves to give into those social pressures with socializing with others. So in states where leadership is forcing socialization, even though there are new viruses emerging, new variants of the virus, people are being forced to go back to school because that's their only option now. It shows a lack of regard on those leaders who are making those decisions for us in our safety and in our emotional well-being. Just a couple of days ago, Republican Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, scolded a group of high school kids for wearing masks, urging them to take them off, accusing them of COVID theater. And to top it all off, he shook his head and said, "This is ridiculous." They were supposed to be there in support of him, but by the end of that video, none of them looked like they wanted to be there. I'm sure every single one of them wished that they were alone in their room with their Xbox, allowing themselves just to be away from this deranged man. So perhaps being a little lonely in that moment would have been a little bit better for them in particular. But now to a simple solution. We should embrace comfort media consumption culture. True crime podcasts. Bailey Sarian's Murder Mystery and Makeup Mondays. She literally just puts on makeup and talks about true crimes. And it's awesome. Reading stories on Reddit by yourself, engaging in idle little apps such as Cats and Soup. You should download it. It's called Cats and Soup. And it's one of the most relaxing things you will ever have on your phone. And the best thing is it's something you can do all by yourself. or you can share it with the 1 or 2 people that you actually want to engage in. So today we analyzed the topic of loneliness. We understood that it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, and we should embrace it a little bit more to help ourselves have a healthier life. We saw that through a cause-effect solution framework in talking about groupthink, talking about what happens when we allow ourselves to be peer pressured in socialization, and what we can do about it in just allowing ourselves to be more alone sometimes. So yeah, maybe every once in a while I will want to go mini golfing or see a movie with someone in a dirty theater, but only when I want to specifically, not before and not after. Thanks, everyone. Can I be excused to the next round, or are we continuing to? Okay, thank you so much. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck.
Good luck. Okay, then. So is the next speaker here and present?
Yep. Are you
Okay,
ready?
then.
Yeah.
Drop the prompt. Somebody
All
else
right,
do
your
it.
topics are in the chat.
Cool. Starting time. Everyone ready? Can you hear me good? Sweet. So author Gwendolyn Brooks, one of the greatest poets of our generation and like a sincerely true hero of mine, she notes in her poem An Ode to Paul Robeson that we are each other's harvest, we are each other's business, we are each other's magnitude and bond, meaning we all have a shared responsibility towards the quality of life that each of our neighbors share in any type of community. And I think this idea incredibly applies to the quotation by Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, "I'm bored with it all," which is also kind of ironic that like one of the leaders of like one of the largest imperialist states in like the world has time to be bored about things. But in looking at his quotation of being bored with it all, we can examine how like existentialism is a necessary tool for social movements, right? Like putting meaning into our acts, putting meaning and like creating meaning into what we're doing is an incredibly important thing whenever we're looking towards advocacy and whenever we're looking to spur social change. And we can examine this in 2 ways. First, how like creating meaning and finding like meaning in existence in social movements can create a shared value system, and it can also spur innovative tactics of resistance. But first, we can examine how we can create a shared value system by first examining what we're fighting for versus what we're fighting against, and then looking at an example of the way that we did that here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. But first, we can talk about like when you create a shared moral fabric for a community, and then you're able to start to So then you're able to start to understand more so like what are the things we're fighting for. Like when we're talking about abolishing police departments, are we talking about abolishing police departments because we have a fundamental disagreement with the way that police officers and police departments function, or do we just not like them? Like what is the goal that we're trying to have? Like what is the world that we want to live, and how are these movements going to like get us closer to that world? And I think when we prioritize existentialism of creating that shared moral framework, then we're able to coalesce more on those. And one of the ways that we were able to do that, after the U.S. Marshals killed a community member of ours, Winston Smith, in June of last year, for the rest of the summer, we occupied a plot of land and created a garden in that space. And by creating that garden, we were able to like literally put life into a space that like it was taken away. But one of the most valuable parts of that came from every morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, we would have political education where we all come together, create our shared values, understand why we're planting bell peppers and hoping that like those bell peppers will like create a better world. Like what is the world that we're fighting for? And because we put meaning into the actions, it was able to spur innovative tactics of resistance. And it doesn't just happen here, it happens all across the world. Because of this, the ways in which capitalism has affected sub-Saharan Africa, with that basically being our international dump, people in Kenya found ways to take that material and actually create building operation from it. There's a nonprofit organization, and there's a company in Kenya that takes a lot of the material waste and like actually makes bricks with that. And so when the infrastructure of the area was starting to fall into place, they were able to resist the state's influence by creating a solution on their own. But in looking at direct actions and the ways that existentialism can start to bolster innovative tactics is by looking at the Black brunch movement, where many individual groups will form small affinity groups and go out to different restaurants, high-end restaurants during their largest peak hour, and start to read off the names of individuals killed by the state within that year. And what that does is it impacts people's ability to like live life as the status quo, as if like things aren't happening around. Because in the same area where Winston Smith was killed, those that the restaurants that are right in front of that charge like $25 a plate, and people are just eating and like enjoying themselves as if nothing happened here. And so by creating direct resistance, we all understood that in order, as long as the capitalist state is able to be comfortable, then the harms that the capitalism state does will continue to proceed. And so by disrupting the actual capital where it is, then we're able to see actual change, like insurance rates of those buildings started to rise, like the actual impacts start to happen, when not only are we just moving for the sake, like we're not moving for the sake of movement, but we're moving for the sake of a shared vision. And so when returning to the quotation by Winston Churchill, I'm bored with it all, it makes sense that the leader of one of the largest imperialist movements in the entire world would have time to be bored, because of the fact that power oftentimes does not care about shared values, but communities do. Thank you. I'm not gonna lie, my Uber's outside, so I have to leave, but have fun.
All good. Thank you so much. You did great. Congrats.
Thanks.
All right. Our final speaker, Alan Gray. Are you ready?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much.
All right. Let's get you the prompts. All right. Your prompts are in there.
Starting my time. If you were able to see a spectrum of all the choices that you've made in your life, the good, the bad, the positive and negative effects that you've had on others, if you could see them all laid before you, would you change anything? Knowing the costs and the benefits, knowing who you are today, would you make the choice to change your past? This is an inquiry that I first encountered not in some scholarly work or the writings of a famed historian. It was actually a video game. Jessica mentioned her Xbox earlier. It was an Xbox game called Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. In the game, you are an exile of the Jedi Order with a dark past, a war that should never have been fought. And the plot of the game involves your character, you, the player, coming to terms with your past and finding a way to move forward. About 2/3 of the way through the game, you see through the Force visions of your past, battles that you won at great cost, love spurned, and you are given the choice to make the changes or continue knowing the cost. This comes to mind when looking at today's quotation from Huey Newton. You can kill my body, but you can't kill my soul. My soul will live forever. Here, soul is a bit too abstract to work with in any meaningful way, but his point is sound. The idea is that we bear the cost of our own past, present, and future, the emotional toll that it has taken on ourselves and others. And so how do we process that in a positive, meaningful way? Well, today I'll first explore why it is that we do that. We look at our past and hold regrets, resentments, and judgments. Then I'll explore the underlying reasoning behind that and how that can be reframed to be dealt with in a more positive, meaningful way, before finally offering a suggestion for how we can reframe and process those feelings. But first, let's recognize and appreciate the fact that we all engage every day in a series of self-judgments. Perhaps if you've heard my prepared speech in the other round, you've heard me share that I'm an alcoholic lawyer. And if you've ever met any alcoholic before me, you can imagine that there is a certain amount of pain, suffering, and guilt that they have endured on their path to recovery. But this is not unique to anyone dealing with a substance use or mental health issue. We all look back on our past and cast our past in terms of what was good and bad, what was preferable and not. And that is casting a judgment. It's telling us that what we did was right or wrong, when in fact, there is no such thing. Those things exist, they happened, and they cannot be changed. So where does all of this come into our mental health? Well, it begins by recognizing that these kinds of self-judgments are what are called cognitive distortions. That's a term that comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, both a book and a modality of psychotherapy. If you've ever been to a counselor or a therapist, they've probably used this with you, though you may not have recognized it at the time. The fundamental premise is that emotional and mental distress come from certain cognitive distortions, distorted thought patterns, and mistaken beliefs. And so by reframing those thought patterns, we can better process the underlying emotional toll. So going back to the example of my alcoholism, the goal here certainly is that I should be accountable for my actions and atone to others for them. But the imposition of the self-judgment that what I did was wrong has no utility. It serves no functional purpose. Rather, it only serves to further and create more emotional distress. So the idea then is to reframe it. Perhaps it would be better if I had not done that, but it did. And I cannot change that. I can change how it affects my present and my future and do my best to help how it affects others' presents and futures. But I cannot cast judgment on myself given its lack of a functional purpose. This links very nicely with Kate's mirror theory and liking gap. The idea is that these distortions change how we perceive ourselves and how we think others perceive us. It's this reframing that cognitive behavioral therapy relies on that allows the process of healing and self-growth to continue. So that may be just as abstract as I said that a soul was. How does this work in actual real practice? Well, what's worked for me, and what I offer in the hopes that it works for you, is the notion of self-compassion. There are probably very few things that someone could come and tell you that they did that you would then respond by judging them, especially someone like a loved one or a close family member. It's unlikely that they could say something that would change how you feel about them. If that's true, then self-compassion simply means affording yourself the same level of understanding. It's a difficult concept. Some liken it to self-forgiveness, but depending on how you define forgiveness, that may not work. But it's the idea of simply acknowledging that things happened and affording yourself the compassion and the space to heal. At the end of the day, Huey Newton got it right. You can't kill my body, but you can kill my body, but you can't kill my soul because my soul lives forever. What we are ultimately left with is the imprint and the effects that we've left on others. So these self-judgments serve no purpose. Given the choice, would I make changes in my life? I would lessen the harm that I did to others, but those choices made me the better man I am today.
All right. Thank you so much, Alan.
Thank you guys so much for a great round. You all did such a great job. Good luck at awards.
Thank you so much, Kate. Thank
Congratulations
you.
again for making it to the finals.
Thank you all so much.
The only one left. And thank you, judges.
Have a great night, everybody.
Have a greght night.
Y'all as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.